with arginase deficiency, there'd never been a controlled trial. So we were basically groundbreaking, not just in terms of doing typical drug development, but also understanding how do you study the effects of the drug in these patients. So we had a phase 1/2 study, and that taught us a lot of things in addition to safety and tolerability and about the drug levels. It also gave us a good understanding of how good pegzilarginase was at lowering levels. And then the other thing that we did in that study, and the reason I'm talking about this because it's a foundation for our phase 3 study, people had never used tests to try and quantify the burden of disease in the affected patients with this condition. And what we did is we introduced a number of assessments so that we could do two things. One is, can we capture the burden of the disease? But more importantly, if we lower arginine levels, are these tools useful in terms of capturing the clinical impact of pegzilarginase beyond just the plasma-arginine reduction? And what we did is we zeroed in on a couple of mobility assessments, and where we are in a clinical trial is it's a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. It's 6 months duration, and then everybody has the option then to switch from the placebo to the active. There's about 30 patients in the trial. We have 20 patients. We'll have about 20 patients on active, 10 on placebo. The primary endpoint is plasma-arginine reduction. We know that, as I mentioned, plasma-arginine reduction is very important for the physician, so that's the primary endpoint. But because there's been no previous controlled trials, it was also important that we were able to, for the first time, demonstrate that there is a link between arginine reduction and clinical benefit. And the tools that we've used are the insights that we got from the phase 1/2 study. So we've got a couple of mobility assessments. So one of them was originally developed for cerebral palsy because it tests the type of problems that kids with cerebral palsy have. And what they have, and we're focused on some tests that look at walking, running, and jumping. So there's a series of 24 tests, including things like walking up and down a flight of stairs. And then they're assessed, they're graded on that before treatment, and then at the end of the double-blind period to look to see if there's an improvement. And then the other test that we're looking at is looking at how far the patients can walk in 2 minutes. It's called a time walk test. And what we learned from our phase 1/2 study is that one of those tests alone works pretty well, but by using the two tests together, they're kind of complementary, and they allow us to look at the impact of lowering arginine levels on the clinical aspects of the disease in a broader population. So that's kind of the background to trial. As I say, the key thing is we were trailblazing. There wasn't any understanding of this disease previously. We've made huge progress. And then what we're really excited about, I mean, it was a challenging time doing clinical trials, particularly in patients with a serious, severe disease because of COVID. But so we're really pleased when we completed enrollment of the study earlier in the year. And obviously now what we're looking at is the key data coming out of that study in December, which is obviously not far away now.